What to do about taxes was topic A in the presidential campaign today. Republican Rick Perry rolled out his plan for an across-the-board tax rate of 20%. As heavy machinery hummed in the background, the Texas governor unveiled his flat tax proposal at a South Carolina plastics plant.
The best representation of my plan is this postcard. This is the size of what we're talking about right here. Taxpayers will be able to fill this out and file their taxes on that.
The Perry plan breaks down this way. The 20% flat tax would be optional. Americans at any income level could choose between that or their current tax rate. The first $12,500 of income per individual would be exempt. And the plan, which had no price tag attached, would maintain deductions for mortgage interest and charitable contributions for households making less than $500,000 a year.
You know, taxes will be cut across all income groups in America. And the net benefit will be more money in Americans' pockets with greater investment in the private economy instead of the federal government.
Perry also touted a broader economic overhaul, including lower corporate tax rates, a balanced budget constitutional amendment, and Social Security reforms that include private accounts for younger workers. The Perry plan has the blessing of a key advisor, Steve Forbes, a two-time contender for the Republican presidential nomination in 1996 and 2000. He ran almost entirely on the idea of a flat tax.
Just remember, with the flat tax, with you as individuals and with you as families, the flat tax is a tax cut. You will gain more than you lose.
This time around, tax reform, in its many variations, is a top priority for the Republican field.
If 10% is good enough for God, 9% ought to be good enough for the federal government.
My first priority would be to put in place a fair tax in this country.
Get rid of all tax expenditures, all loopholes, all deductions, all subsidies, all corporate welfare.
We want successful families focused on job creation and growth, not meeting with CPAs and tax lawyers to avoid taxes. And the death tax is inherently morally a bad tax.
Another top contender, Mitt Romney, has stopped short of proposing a flat tax, calling instead for other changes to the tax code. But Perry today criticized the plans of his rivals, as well as that of President Obama, who has proposed a surtax on millionaires, among other changes to the code.
America is under a crushing burden of debt. And the president simply offers larger deficits in the politics of class warfare. Others simply offer these microwave plans with warmed-over reforms based on current ingredients.
The president's re-election campaign, in turn, targeted both Romney and Perry, saying they, quote, would shift a greater share of taxes away from large corporations and the wealthiest onto the backs of the middle class. Perry said today he anticipates such attacks, but he insisted his ideas show he is the change agent voters want. We get two different views on the flat tax now from Stephen Moore, a member of the Wall Street Journal's editorial board and co-founder of the conservative Club for Growth, and Robert Kuttner, co-founder and co-editor of the American Prospect magazine. He's also a senior fellow at Demos, a liberal think tank. Gentlemen, thank you both for being with us. And Stephen Moore, I'm going to start with you. You've long been a proponent of flatter taxes. Do you agree with Governor Perry that what he is proposing today is going to lead to stronger economic growth?
Oh, I don't think there's any question, Judy. I mean, I think that the tax system right now is a complete albatross around the neck of the U.S. economy. We have, on the corporate side, the second highest tax rates in the world among our trading partners, and I think that most businessmen and women and corporate CEOs will tell you that puts the U.S. at a competitive disadvantage. On the individual side, the system is just a complicated mess. the average American is spending 15 hours a year just figuring out what their taxes are. The simplification of the flat tax, the driving down the rates, and one other thing, Judy, that's very important. The flat tax eliminates all of the double taxes on saving and investment. And so hopefully that means we would get more saving and investment, and those are the seed corns of a growing economy.
So, Robert Kuttner, the argument you're hearing from Mr. Moore and Governor Perry is that this is going to unleash jobs, a creation of jobs and economic growth.
Well, there are several things wrong with Perry's proposal. First of all, he didn't put any numbers on it. So anybody, whether in business or running for public office, who's remotely serious about changing something as fundamental as the tax system is going to tell you what it costs. Secondly, his plan says if you do better under the present tax system, you can pay your taxes under the present system. If you do better with a 20% flat tax, you can take the 20% flat tax. Obviously, that means that people are going to take whichever one does better for them, which means there's going to be a huge revenue loss, which is going to make the deficit worse. And also, the people who are going to opt for the flat tax are people who are currently paying more than 20%. They're the more affluent people. So this is a tax break for affluent people. And look, we had 3 big tax cuts under President Bush. If tax cuts were the key to prosperity, we'd all be in clover, but we're in a steep recession. And
again, on the point of whether it creates economic growth, how do you see that?
Well, again, we've had a legacy of one tax cut after another, and we are in the worst crisis of unemployment and low investment since the Great Depression. There's more to life than low taxes. And finally, if you think about the issue of tax simplification, the complicated part of paying your taxes is not multiplying the rate times your taxable income. The complicated part is going through all your receipts and figuring out what your taxable income is. This doesn't do anything to simplify that.
Let's go to the point, Stephen Moore, that he made a moment ago, that it would result in a revenue loss because people could pick and choose which system they wanted to go under and make the deficit worse. I kind of like this idea of making the flat tax optional because what it basically says to Americans, look, if you want to keep your mortgage deduction or your charitable deduction or some other sacred cow, you can stay in the old system. But for people who want a modernized system that's very simple, I mean, we're talking, Judy, about a postcard tax return that you could fill out literally in 15 minutes. That's a big deal for people, and I disagree with when Robert says, oh, everybody just is going to take whatever form gives them the lowest tax liability. I think the vast majority of Americans just say, give me a system that is fair and simple. And I think the point that Robert misses, and a lot of liberal critics of this miss, is this plan is ultimately a kind of Washington versus America issue. Everybody in Washington hates the flat tax. When you think about it, lobbyists hate the flat tax, right. Tax accountants hate the flat tax, politicians hate the flat tax because the power center in Washington is the tax code. If you have a simple system that can't be gamed, you don't have corporate welfare in the tax code, then you basically allow Americans to have something simple, pro-growth. And look, Robert, you're right, we had tax cuts under Bush, but it's also true we had big supply-side tax rate reductions in the 1980s. We not only got a huge increase in economic growth, we actually doubled the tax revenue. So I think we can do this in a way that increases revenue, increases jobs, and is not regressive. Several points to react to, Robert Kuttner. What about the point he made about fairness, that this basically is a more fair system for taxpayers? Well, Washington versus the rest of America, fair system, those are slogans. He didn't respond to any of the points that I made. It is going to increase the deficit. More affluent people are going to get a bigger tax break. The governor didn't even do us the courtesy of telling us what it costs. So you can't make policy based on slogans. I think the fact that this doesn't have any numbers in it means that it was thrown together as a campaign device, and it's a mark of its fundamental lack of seriousness. The tax revenues went up in the 80s and 90s because people were getting whacked with Social Security increases. And now, you're going to put Social Security at risk because revenue is going to be socked again. So I think it's a very half-baked plan. Come back to you, Stephen Moore, on the fact it's not just Rick Perry. It's Herman Cain with the famous 999 plan. It's Newt Gingrich, Governor John Huntsman, who are talking about a flat tax. As you look at those proposals, is there one that's better than the others in your mind? And how many Americans are paying taxes today? What percentage of Americans pay taxes? Great point. Well, first of all, I think Newt Gingrich said something very wise in the last Republican debate.
debate when he said, look, at least Republicans, they have all these different plans out there, the 999 plan, now this flat tax and other plans. They're having a very substantive debate about what to do about this tax code, which is simply indefensible. I mean, everybody agrees we have to get rid of it and start over, at least among Republican voters. So I think that's a very healthy debate. And it's liberals, I think, who are sounding reactionary. Oh, no, they want to defend the status quo, not to move to something that's pro-growth. And Robert, here's I think the key point that I would make about this plan. You know, you say it's regressive, that the poor are going to get hit hard in the middle class. There is nothing that is more regressive than our current tax code. We have a tax system right now that in part because of this tax system, we have 14 million unemployed people. It's not working. So I say the most regressive plan out there is the current tax system.
You want to respond to that, Bob Kuttner?
I certainly do. 14 million people are not working, and the number's actually higher than that. Not because of the tax code. We've been cutting taxes. 14 million people are not working because we let Wall Street go berserk by deregulating all of the protections that prevented Wall Street from gambling with the house's money. And I just want to repeat the point. If you have any deductions at all, which most Americans do, you can't fill out your tax form on a postcard because you got to calculate what your reductions are. So it sounds like a serious debate because you've got different proposals. 999 is even worse because most people would face a tax increase. And this is a way of making the budget deficit worse, so you can then say, whoops, the deficit's bigger than we thought it was. Now we got to cut Social Security. We got to cut other programs. It's fundamentally unserious. It's mainly a set of slogans.
So, Bob Kuttner, you're essentially dismissing all the different Republican flat tax or flatter tax proposals.
I'm being critical of the flat tax. It's not going to make things simpler. It's simply going to make things less fair. It's certainly not going to generate jobs. Let me finish. Yep. And I'm also being critical of the 999 plan because most people would face a tax increase. They'd face 9% sales, which is a huge sales tax hike on top of state sales taxes. They'd still be paying property taxes, still be paying excise taxes. These plans are all very half-baked. They haven't been costed out in a serious way.
Very brief final word.
All right, look. This could be a bipartisan deal. I mean, basically, Republicans are saying we're willing to get rid of all these deductions and loopholes in the tax system in exchange for lower rates. We've done this before, Judy. We did it in 1986 when 97-3 it passed the Senate. We got the rate down to 28%. You have people like, remember when the governor of California, not Gray Davis, but the current governor of California.
You mean Jerry Brown?
Yeah, when he ran for president, he ran on a flat tax idea. Right. So I think this is something you can get liberals and conservatives to agree with.
All right.
No way, because
this is just the beginning of a discussion of taxes. Gentlemen, thank you both.
Thank you.
Stephen Moore, Bob Kuttner.
Thank you.